Ask the GMs, episode 31, The Fury of Dracula. Good evening, this is Zach for Ask the GMs, a podcast where we talk about board games and RPGs. Passing it over to RC.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's get into the Dracula. Damn it, Dracula. Passing it on to Sean.
Oh yes. Break out your fangs, sharpen your nails. It's Fury of Dracula time. Passing it on to Pat.
Hey everybody, this is Pat. I'm glad everybody is listening in this evening with us. It is good to be back after a hiatus, especially for podcast. I find it fun talking with the fellas. I would like to give a shout out to Cape Fear Games as always. Thank you for being the home away from home for which we can meet up with one another, play our games, use y'all's services and the well, how do you say, cultivated inventory? I don't know. I'm rambling. Anyways, thank y'all for joining us this evening. Zach, would you like to take us into the history of the game?
Yes, I will. So, Fury of Dracula is a game by Games Workshop originally. It used to be one of their early games. It came with a puzzle board. It was put on the market because at the time there were almost no horror board games. I believe Arkham Horror was still in its design phase. And it was designed as the follow-up to the novel. It was supposed to be a direct sequel, so you'd see similar characters, in fact, exact characters such as Mina Harker, Dr. Seward Van Helsing, versus Dracula and his return. This is like the follow-up. This is Dracula 2. He's back for revenge. How does everyone kind of feel about like that as a concept for a board game?
I think it works.
Well, I'm not too up to date on the lore as maybe some other people. I'm not sure exactly who Mina Harker is. Well, beyond the game, I believe it was a love interest of Dracula's. So not having much knowledge of the lore is not necessary to play / enjoy this game, and maybe it'll just pique your interest to actually learn more about the story.
Yeah, so most of the major novel characters do appear in the board game. Jonathan Harker, which is your initial lead, was basically the lawyer, the solicitor, that goes to Dracula's castle, and Dracula basically gets him to forge some documents, and Dracula basically leaves Transylvania to go to Europe, and basically like, oh man, Jonathan's wife's pretty hot, or technically fiancé is pretty hot, and kills her girlfriend, and then Mina gets bitten. That's what she's in the game with a bite on her neck. Lord Galdamain and Dr. Seward were basically Mina's best friend's suitors, Lucy, who dies because she gets bit by a vampire. And Van Helsing was the crazy German who knew about vampirism and how to stop it. That's the 30-second version of the novel.
Yep. And another cool thing about this game is I like the asymmetrical characters play style. Everybody has a job to do and a different thing they bring to the team. And it is co-op, but also against the villain. How would you say the game style is there, Zach?
So it's a one versus all, which is not a rare type of board game, but they only come up every so often. Another game in that similar style is Middle Earth Quest. There's several more than just that. Just Fury of Dracula is personally my favorite of the bunch.
Yeah, I don't think it's a super common kind of recipe.
Yeah, you usually find more RPG-like board games like that, where basically it's the Dungeon Master-esque character versus the rest of the players. And it's not always like a competitive nature, though it can be, depending on the game.
Yeah.
Betrayal on House on the Hill. Is
it is, because often it's one versus all like halfway through the game, but some of those haunts can make multiple traders or whatever.
Oh, yeah. And there are even ones where there are no traders, but it's every person for themselves, like the one where you get lifted off by the giant bird.
Yep.
You're all making a run for parachutes.
I can't remember if the slime is like that too, where it fills the whole house.
And
Yeah,
there's
that's
even
kind of all for yourself there.
and those are more like open competition versions. And then there's also even a few of the haunts that cause it to be there is no betrayal. It's just there's something going on. You have to get so many omens and things like that. So it's not totally like Fury, but it's a similar premise in many of the haunts.
Yeah, moving on to the history of the game in terms of following up on it. There have been 4 editions. The third and fourth are almost the same, but I'll tackle them at once. The first edition was like, the first concept. The board was very unique. It had a puzzle board where you'd put the puzzle together and it would make the board. The gameplay compared to later editions pretty basic. There were only 4 total players, 3 hunters and 1 Dracula. Mina wasn't added until the second edition. I've heard in theory that the first edition had like a mini expansion, but it was hard to get. And then the rest of the gameplay is kind of the same. Basically, Dracula has hidden movement. He's trying to hide across Europe and either hide vampires or escape the clutches of the hunters as they're trying to hunt him down and kill him. And then the hunters get to move, gather items, and plan, and Dracula has to either be wily or bounce around. The second edition added the fact that there's a Dracula deck of cards reflecting each location. So the Dracula player can't like lie or cheat. He has only 1 card for every location in the game. The third edition just made the game a little more streamlined and guaranteed an ending. Once you get into the third week, so after the 21st turn, Dracula just slowly racks up points and wins the game. The difference between the third and the fourth edition is the cards are bigger and the models are like a millimeter bigger. The only reason why there is even like a fourth edition is Fantasy Flight Games did make Fury of Dracula third edition, and then Games Workshop dropped the license with them, and then WizKids made the fourth edition. And there's a whole big hullabaloo like why that happened. It was pretty much X-Wing was making more money than Warhammer, and Games Workshop's like, what the hell, guys? Like, we licensed through you, and now you're making a game that sells more than our main game, 40K. And Fantasy Flight was like, deal with it.
So I'd like to speak on something there, Zach. I'd like to talk about the difficulty level for this and kind of like the viewpoint of somebody just getting into this game real quick.
Go for it.
So as far as difficulty levels, as far as actions in the game is very simple. It's if my memory serves correct, is you do like either 1 or 2 actions a turn. And, it's like, go ahead.
The hunters all get a day action in turn order. The turn order does matter. And then they all get a night action. And then Dracula gets to move basically a space and put a card down.
Yeah, so it is very simple as far as the actions and just moving pieces on the board. Where it gets to be more complex is the depth of your choices of your actions, because this is one where you very, very much need to work together with your group. And it definitely helps to have somebody that's knowledgeable of the game, because whenever I first attempt any board game, I just assume I'm going to lose right out the gate. And this one does have a difficulty level to it. I don't know if that depends on how abled your Dracula is. I don't know if I've gone into a game with an incompetent Dracula, so I can't speak as to that. But it's definitely not a run-of-the-mill easy game. I'd say it's probably on par with difficulty level of Shadows over Camelot. Like, every win is going to be squeaked out. It's not going to be given. You got to work for it.
So to be fair, when I play with Dracula's full rule set, because I played the game a lot. So I am giving you guys the full challenge every time. There are rules where you can like take some cards out, like power wise. And there's even like a first game mode where like Dracula gets like no powers and all the hunters have a set location. I don't play it like that because I like the variety of like the hunters can start everywhere. It's one of my secret like favorite things of the game. Like there's no game that's going to be exactly the same at the start. But you can kind of lessen the difficulty. I also like it just as like, oh no, I'm going to throw a challenge at my players.
Well, I mean, as we saw, like in the last game we played together, Zach, where they players right off the bat, one players got a card and picked your location. So within the first round, we knew where you were.
I think it was the very first turn.
Yeah, it was. He drew his card and said, "Oh, I get to choose 2 locations," and boom, Genoa.
Yep, it was an event card. I believe it's newspaper reports. You pick 2 cities, and Dracula has to show if he's there or has been there.
Yep. And that was pretty wild because I played it, this game a few times, and I'd never seen that happen. And so, I mean, like you said, it does, by having that liberty of starting anywhere and everything like that, and with the full onset, you do also get that chance to right out the gate, have the hunt beyond, that kind of thing.
And I'll say just from the experience of the games that I've played so far, a lot of the times we end up chasing Dracula around as a big net, trying to corner him into one section of the map, and that's usually how we end up finding him. I've never seen it happen where you find him in the first turn, but I've definitely heard stories about Dracula following characters around through Europe.
Yeah, you don't have to hem him in and sniff out his trail.
And that's also part of the difficulty of you can find him and run into Dracula on turn 1. You don't want to because likely you don't have a single weapon, so he's going to kick the crap out of you.
Exactly. As one of our players found out, much to their dismay. Hey.
It's the running joke. Hey guys, I found Dracula at night. Crap.
Yep.
Wham!
And also, you don't go hunting Dracula with okay, I've got a pistol. I'm gonna go get him, dude. You need more than that.
Yeah, you need to go at it Ash Williams. Here's my gun and my other gun and my chainsaw fist.
Kind of like the Road Warrior in Thunderdome when he's coming into the city and they're like, all your weapons, and he's pulling out knives, guns, grenades, pistols out of every pocket and corner of his coat and boots, and there's just a stack of weapons in front of him.
So Zach, for those people that haven't played before, I know it seems kind of obvious, logistically, hey, don't run into a vampire at night. But what does that mean in game terms? What boons does he get at night versus the day?
So Dracula and any vampires you guys find have a fight deck. Basically, at the start of combat, I get to shuffle and draw 5 cards. Combat kind of has a rock, paper, scissors nature to it of both sides will play a card face down, meaning the player and the Dracula player. And once the cards are flipped face up, if the hunter card, the hero card, has a symbol and it matches the Dracula's symbol on his card, the vampire card's canceled. At night, all the vampire cards get a bonus ability. So an example would be Claws. It says normally do 2 damage, but at night do 2 damage and then do another 2 damage. So 4. And most players in the game have less than 10 HP. Except for Dracula.
I think Golding has 11.
Yeah, he is 11.
Yeah, everybody else is pretty much what you would expect from characters of their age and time period.
Victorian, European, yeah.
A little bit less because he's an old man.
Yeah, in terms of actual age, Van Helsing is 97.
Jesus.
He's ancient.
Because I think he was in his late 80s, early 90s at the onset of the novel.
Yeah, and this is the follow-up too, so this is years later.
Interesting little historical fact to throw in there. The library in Ireland that Stoker used to research the story for Dracula, they actually have all the actual books that he used to research. They were doing an inventory of antique books, and they found all the cards inside the books that he had checked out and sites his research material. So
That's
when you
pretty
go
cool.
to that library, you can actually go take a look at, and they even have, I think, you can make white glove appointments where you go in, they give you the white cloth gloves to turn the pages with and stuff, and actually look through the book that he actually was looking at when he wrote it.
Like Carmilla and a couple other ones, yeah.
And like one of them was like the history and folklore of Transylvania, the history and folklore of gypsies and such, even though I know that's a term that we don't use these days here, but at that time that was the title.
So, Zach, you talked about how Dracula's running around all of Europe and how we kind of have to make that net to capture his ass with hopes of defeating him. But what are some of the items we can get? And, you said stock up with some tools before you go fight him, which would make more sense. Like, so how's that all work?
So across Europe, there are small cities and large cities. Why these matter is in large cities, you can get supplies, you can get your items. These either range from combat weapons, such as, a knife, a gun, a rifle, garlic, crucifix, holy symbols, or useful items like a fast horse to ride between cities, a dog to protect you from wolves and bats. So the hunters want to regularly draw cards. The problem is when you get supplies, if all but one of the characters only gets one card, and then most players can only hold 3 of the cards. So you have to be very choosy on what you pick. So often it's finding times to get the equipment, and that becomes the rub. In the game, the hunters can only move during daylight. They can either choose to move by sea, but trade off moving at night, but you get to move the most distance. You can move by train, but you have to have a train ticket and still move pretty far. Or you can simply walk between cities, which is the slowest. But it's also at the speed at which Dracula travels. So if you get...
I was going to say, I know this is out there, but you mentioned a dog. Can you, as Dracula, kill my dog?
No, I cannot kill the dog.
Oh, thank God. All right. I was about to go John Wick.
So the players have to make an interesting choice. Do we draw stuff during the day, but Dracula might be getting away from you? Or you do it at night, and the problem when you do it at night is there's an event deck, and the event deck at night is drawn from the bottom, and all the Dracula cards go to Dracula. So it makes a lot of give and take in the game.
And the thing too is with the event cards is you do want to draw them, because some of the events really can throw the way a fight with Dracula is going to go, or the hunt for Dracula, how it's going to go. Because like we talked about, the newspaper reports or the extra action where you can move at night, or something like that, can make a big difference in everybody's plans and such like that. And also in Dracula, too, if he's caught off guard, or because suddenly we get, move at night and can move again into his area faster and closing the net, it puts the pressure on him as well.
Yeah, that's the really interesting thing about the event deck is it's 2/3 Hunter cards and 1/3 Dracula cards. So you always have a gamble.
And don't you only lose Hunter cards?
Oh, you're good. I was going to say it reminds me a lot of the bad deck in Shadows over Camelot.
I was gonna say, don't you only lose Hunter cards? Like, I think there's only one card in the entire deck that reshuffles all of the Hunter cards back in.
So the deck will eventually reshuffle itself if it gets completely used. There's a Dracula event that only shuffles the Dracula ones back in, though.
Yeah,
and there is a few that you can go back and reclaim an item out of the discard for the hunters, I think. And
there's Van Helsing's named big card where he gets to look at the bottom 8 cards and remove the Draculas.
Right. And I think there's one that reshuffles that. I think RC is right. I think there is one that reshuffles the discard deck back in, but I'm not sure on the event, or might be the item card.
There's also one that gets an ally out of the discard pile too.
Yep.
Which is really powerful. I think I think that you had something when we played our game that ended up causing us to lose that guy after we got him. But it probably would have won us the game to have that character hanging around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, some of the more powerful events in the game is both sides have allies, and both of them are nasty. Like Dracula's nasty one is there's a giant wolf, and basically he just gets to do a damage to a character every turn. Versus the heroes can play Sister Agatha, which is a nun, and basically it severely limits what Dracula can do in combat. Otherwise, he just starts taking free damage.
Yep. I think that's the one that did us in, is we had Sister Agatha and you got rid of her somehow. Because he started chasing me around while I was Van Helsing and started kicking my old ass.
Yeah, devilish power, it's the opposite. Like, you guys have good luck. Devilish power is like, get rid of an ally, do this or do this, and good luck is like the opposite. Like, get rid of Dracula's ally, do this or do this.
Dracula is forcing you in the retirement home, RC.
It happens
also-
every
It's your
time.
time.
Also, things like consecrated ground and stuff. If you can get those while everybody has like all the item,
The Heavenly
know,
House
to be
cards.
that can be a big wallop also, because suddenly you can have like, 4 or 5 different areas that are cut off to Dracula. So, and he can only travel on foot or by sea. So you can kind of really tighten the net if you play that card well.
Okay, we kind of talked about the items and events. Let's talk about the heroes that we get to play as.
All right. How about we all introduce one and talk about them? Do you want me to start there, Zach?
Yeah, start with Lord Goldemain.
All right, Lord Goldemain. So his stick is he is wealthy and privileged. Go figure. What his wealth ability does is whenever you supply in a city, you'll draw 2 item cards instead of 1. So he is able to buy a lot of shit. Makes sense. The other part about him is he has privilege. I'm trying not to think of jokes here, guys. When you reserve a ticket, gain 2 tickets instead of 1. And then the final thing about Lord Goldemain is he has the most health at 11. So I know whenever I play, I like to play Lord Goldemain or Dr. John Seward. RC, would you like to tell us about Van Helsing?
Yeah, sure. Because I'll skip over to the favorite old man. So he has the leader ability. Whenever you trade, you can choose to trade event cards with another hunter. Now, to trade, you do have to normally be in the same space as another person, but Van Helsing can do it from any space.
Specifically, the event card portion, though.
Yeah, the event card portion. He also has strong will, so he can take another bite from Dracula, but at 8 HP, if Dracula's already bitten you twice, you're probably donezo anyways. Sean, pick from the other 2.
Well, Stewart's biggest thing is his ability to carry more, in the sense of he can have, I believe it's 4 item cards and 4 event cards,
That's correct.
which in a game where you have to make limited choices from limited inventory space, that extra inventory space on both events and items is a huge benefit. So, I mean, he is quite powerful in that aspect. Also, I believe he has the, the recordings, because he's supposedly technology savvy compared to the other characters. And I forget exactly what the recordings did, but it's pretty powerful.
Now, each character does have a named event. They're all very powerful. Like, I believe like Lord Goldemain's like can prevent a lot of damage. Mina gets like a free like way to like look across Europe for Dracula. Like it's not. There's nothing to to like scoff at. It's also why Van Helsing's ability to trade events is a big deal. Dr. Seward's additional power is he gets to anyone that rests in his space, including himself, gets to heal an additional HP because he's a doctor. RC, would you like to describe what Mina Harker does?
Sure. So Mina has a psychic bond. So if you're the active and you're in the same city as another character, which you'll notice a lot of these characters, they have abilities that work well when they're together, which is kind of important. But whenever she's in another city with another hunter, you can force Dracula to tell you if he's in your region. So the map itself is separated up into a number of regions in Europe. Mostly they're countries, but a few of them are larger areas.
Yeah, Spain, Germany, France, Italy, the
Baltic.
Eastern Bloc, France, not France, England.
And then she has Drained, which is the one downside to the fact that she can always just force Dracula to ask if you're in the same area as her. She is required to play with one card revealed, one event and one item revealed to Dracula at all times.
So pretty much the first she draws.
And that's something to keep in mind when you're playing this game, is that it does want you to build a net to try to find Dracula, but a lot of the characters rely on each other being close enough that they can hang out together. So risk reward as far as how much you're willing to spread the net in order to keep Dracula in one place, and then benefit from your own abilities to help each other.
Yeah, because it's like the argument's like, we can be 2 cities away. Well, I'm 3 cities away. It's like, maybe not 3 away.
Yeah.
And that's also, though, playing into kind of one of the themes in the novel itself, is that individually, no one was really a match for Dracula. It was only through the efforts of the group, that they were able to really defeat him.
And that makes sense in combat too. Like one-on-one, Dracula versus a hunter, like it's usually in Dracula's favor unless the hunter has like really well equipped. If it's Dracula versus 2 hunters or versus all 4, he's screwed.
Yeah.
They literally just like surround him with baseball bats and kick the crap out of him.
Which is, I think, the reason it's hard to find that balance while you're hunting him, because as RC said earlier, you want to go wide to spread that net to capture him, but then you also want to be stacked on top of each other, so when it comes to a fight, you got buddies. So it's a delicate balance between those.
Well,
And
you
then-
also want to be spread out in the beginning, but once you kind of get a couple of clues as to where he is, and you can start trying to recognize the pattern of movement and such, and where you can start triangulating in the sense of like, okay, so if he was here and he's had 2 moves, he could be here, here, or here, and then you start moving in closer to everybody. But those initial few rounds, you want everybody pretty well spread out.
Yep, and then in terms as the Dracula player, you get 15 HP, so you have more HP than everyone else. You can only move by road. You're too proud to move by train. You can also move by sea, but you take 2 damage for starting it, and then every other turn you take a damage, so you don't want to be in the ocean for very long. And you have a couple additional powers that are cards you can play. And while they're powerful, you can only play them like once every 6 turns. So they're cool, but they're not coming back to you instantly.
I remember one tricky one, I think it was wolf form, where you could like essentially hop over the party. And I know that kind of threw us for a loop a few times.
Yeah, wolf form's very powerful, Dracula.
Sorry, I just wanted to talk about the dumb thing that you could do with wolf form, because we found out from Zach the hard way is that you can use it to jump over oceans too.
What?
So you don't use it to jump over oceans. You can be in the ocean as Dracula and go to port and jump the port into like a further city in. So yeah, to use wolf form, you you take a single damage as Dracula, and then you can move up to 2 cities away. What makes this like mind bending for the players is it's up to, and you can hop a city. So if Pat's in front of me, I can literally leapfrog over him and go to a city behind him. What makes it complicated is there's another power that Dracula has that's called Hide that looks like a normal location. So you can wolf form and go nowhere. And for the players, they have to be like, well, he's up to 2 places away, or he hid, and it throws off the math like brutally.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Zach, I got a question for you. I haven't played Dracula before, maybe one day, but as having played probably Dracula the most amongst this group, what are kind of some Dracula tactics that you like? Because for a long time I was thinking like, what if you just went in real early and just murdered the hell out of a hunter before they're even equipped? Like, is that a potential tactic, or what's some different things you?
Yeah, that's not a bad tactic. You want to make sure they're not close to anyone, and you just corner them and kick the crap out of them. The problem, like, you have to risk it because, like, by doing so, like, everyone's going to swarm in that area afterwards. So you have to have like an escape plan too.
Yeah, because the Dracula that runs all the time does not seem like the most fun Dracula to fight against. Like, oh, it's hide and go seek the game.
Yeah, I like hiding a little bit, but I do like to get into combat if I can. One tactic which is amazing because no one ever looks behind them is you just follow a hunter because they never turn around. Oh, I'm in the city. Well, Dracula's never been there. Okay, well, I'm moving on to the next city. It's like, okay, Dracula, like, I'm moving to that city right now. Thanks for confirming I've never been there.
Also, I would say one of your tactics too is to look and see who is feeling really self-confident and kind of teach them a lesson about it.
And some of it's also goading, just like, draw an event. How bad can it be? It can't be a Dracula event. Like, it's 2/3 Hunter events. Oops, it's a Dracula card. Thanks, guys.
Yep. I think it was Lindsay that was like every time she drew from the bottom, it was Dracula.
And she was playing Mina, and she just like, I just want a fucking event. I just want one.
He had one that was revealed to you. He's like, I need another event.
It doesn't even have to be great, just like, something. So what are everyone's like overall opinions of Fury of Dracula?
I enjoy
It's a fun
the hell
game.
out of the game. It's definitely one of those games, in my opinion, that if you were like, we can't do like our regular RPG, how about Fury of Dracula? And I'd be like, hell yeah, down for that.
For me, it's definitely one of the ones where I play it after like a long time of not having played it, and of course I forget everything, and then maybe 2 or 3 rounds in, it all comes back to me. But every time I play it, I want to play it again shortly afterwards because it's like, okay, I got my head wrapped around it. I'm developing some tactics here towards the end after I've got my ass chewed up by Dracula like once or twice, and I'm always ready to get a second game in.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games to look for at the table, just because if it is there and we have the people to do it, the full 5, and everybody's willing to commit to the time involved in it, it's definitely worth checking out if you get the chance.
Also, thank you for bringing that up, RC. That is one negative of the game. You always play with the 4 hunters, so if you have less than 5 players, some players playing double duty with characters. And while not difficult, like, part of the advantage the hunters have is the hive mind, like multiple ideas from different people.
Yeah, that was one that in the last game that I played with you was having to play 2 characters myself was kind of because the other players had never played before, or that was a little bit on the difficult side because not only do I have to be the only one that's played before, but I'm also trying to track 2 characters.
And help drive the rest of your team. You had to be y'all's team's Van Helsing, Sean.
Oh, I was Van Helsing and Stewart.
Yeah, and then as the Dracula player, just like you have to be patient and plan like way ahead, and you have to be like willing to accept like whatever you do is going to fall apart. So pretty much you have to be a game master. Like it's like that's it's like just simulating like planning the game.
Yep. Whatever I plan, the players will do the most screwed up version of it. What's that meme of, every party begins as with a picture of the Fellowship of the Ring, and every party ends with, picture of Monty Python running away from the rabbit, run away.
Yep, pretty much.
Now, I think Fury of Dracula is currently out of print, but if you can find a copy, it's worth playing. I still own my second edition copy, which I definitely spent more than a couple dollars on because it was out of print at the time. But I do prefer the third edition. If you can get the fourth edition, get it. Like the bigger deals, like the cards are like playing card size. I'm like, okay, so they're just harder to sleeve. Thanks. But they had to make it slightly different than the fourth edition. Sorry, the third edition.
What's the price point on a game like this, Zach?
It was 50 or 60 when it originally came out. With COVID and cardboard, that might adjust it. And if it's out of print, that like racks up the price by like 50 to 100%. In fact, let's just take a quick gander. To the internet.
Now, the price you paid was 50. You think it was it meets that price point for you as far as enjoyment?
Yeah, you get a lot of good models and a lot of good models to paint, a lot of cool locations. The third edition is $250 at Walmart.
Oh, God. I'm surprised Walmart even put that on their shelf, to be honest.
In retrospect, the first edition is $65.
That's much more approachable.
The fourth edition on eBay is $250. So yeah, if you want the third or fourth edition, you're probably spending $100, $150.
Yeah, I don't know about it at that price point where you got, 50, 60. I'm there for it. But if I'm spending, 150 or 200 something, it better be either Twilight Imperium or Gloomhaven or something of that caliber.
So Board Game Geek has it for $125 new. That's not that bad. It's more than I want to pay, but $125, okay, twice the price. Because there's some games we talked about, like if we go look at Shadows over Camelot, that game's expensive as hell.
Or even look at the recently came out, Masters of the Universe game, that board game that came out. Yes, it has a lot of miniatures, but I mean, it's over $400 new. And,
Well,
I mean, I will say, Dracula, Fury of Dracula, for me, a price point of $125, if I had the money to spare, is not out of the range, in my opinion, because to me, the game has such a huge amount of continuous playability, because no two games are alike.
So looking at Board Game Geek, if you just want very good, so not new, very good, 85. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Fury of Dracula, Shadows over Camelot can run you $200 now, by the way, as like a different like context of out of print games.
Shoot.
And I don't see the other part of it is, I mean, while the game does have a lot of depth and, like Sean said, a lot of replayability, I'm a little bit of a miniatures whore. And, what do we have? 5 miniatures in this?
Yep. Dracula and one of each hunter.
And I know the train tickets were on like good card stock, and all the pieces and all the cards are all of high quality. So you're not getting cheated out in that. But sheer amount of plastic, like Shadows has a lot. So I don't know. Just a thought for thoughts.
It's also very different in terms of a hidden movement game, as all the other ones I've ever seen as board games just give you pen and paper to like record what space you're on. And I've always been of the opinion that pen and paper is not really a board game like piece. That's like the laziest piece you can put in a game. Versus like Fury of Dracula, be like, no, it's a deck of cards. Here's every location. You can't cheat. All the cards can only be used once. I think that's a very clever way to address that problem.
Yep, I would agree with you there.
Because the problem with like pen and paper is like he can cheat. Well, he's not supposed to cheat. It's like, well, the temptation is much more easy right there.
Yep.
I said I was at 117, but it's really 114. Now let me get that pencil and scratch that.
And that's true too with a pen and paper game. Also, if there is a question of is this correct, play wise, it's how do you know if somebody has scratched something out and corrected it? Like, oh, I don't mean to go there, I mean to go here. During their actual turn when they're allowed to do that, versus it's like, well, we can go back and look through the car and see.
Well, also like say you had a pen and paper. Dracula, were you in this space 2 turns ago? No, you have to reveal it. It's like, okay, let me show you my whole pad of everywhere I've ever moved. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one dynamic of the game I don't think we've touched on yet, which is pretty fun, unique. Is okay, it's a cooperative game, correct? But Dracula's sitting across the table staring at you, listening to all the things you're trying to cooperate. So as a team, you have to kind of like hint, hint, nudge, nudge, this is what we need to do without tipping off Dracula so he doesn't get a heads up.
And Pat is right about that. Like, you can't show another player a card. You have to show Dracula too. And the only time you're allowed to leave the table and talk in a group is if 2 of you are trading. And I thought that was a brilliant rule. Because it's like Dracula's presence across Europe. Just the theme of it.
Yeah. The network of spies and scouts and such like that.
Because he definitely has an oppressing presence at the table. And, he's definitely scary, big, bad, evil guy. He nets it all there.
Also want to call up the art on the cards being good to great. Like, it's not amazing, but it's good.
Well, it's thematic also. It is correct for the time period and the feel of the game. Also,
Yeah.
I have to say that, too, on a note of, like, the fact that you can only move during your day turn and such like that carries that whole feeling of you are not in a modern time period. You are in a different time period, a different set of standards and culture and such like that. And
Well, yeah, especially back then, it's like, unless you were in your home tiny town, you were not randomly going anywhere at night.
No.
unless there was something special going on, like you've hired a coat and
Or
they're
it's the
able to-
summer fair, everyone walks to it, but like that's a big boisterous event.
Right. But I'm just saying that, there are special events that can allow you to move at night and such like that. But they are just that, special events, that's not a common occurrence in the game, to be able to move at night and such. And as you said, the oppressive feeling and stuff. But when you read the original Dracula book, there's that oppressive feeling of the vampire. And also I like the fact the vampire is tough as nails, in the sense of this is not a walkover where it's like you have special powers that make you equal to the monster that you're facing. No, you get, roped off by Dracula separate from the rest of the pack, and your ass is toast.
I mean, like, just look, last game we had our buddy Chris play Goldemain, and he only came in with one weapon, so he tried to dodge and run away all the time. Or sorry, escape, not run away. It was the same answer, but yeah.
Right. I mean, you can't go up against Dracula and, with just a pistol and maybe some holy bullets or something like that. You have to have, do I have a crucifix? Do I have garlic? Do I have dogs? Do I have, in fact, sometimes, really, honestly, I've felt when playing this game that the guns are okay. They're good against a lot of the minions, but against Dracula itself, you have to come in with something more than a gun.
I also like how you listed, like, you need a gun, you need garlic, you need dogs, you need these other things. Like, it's like, Sean, most people can only hold 3 things.
Yep, that's just it. You have to figure it out what 3 things are going to be the things that I can do, and also we'll work together to make me be able to face off against Dracula.
And be lucky enough to find.
That was going to be my other follow-up, like, lucky enough to find, and also you had the time to, like, get them. Like, you weren't burned in that time.
Well, like last game, Seward had, I had made sure Seward had the equipment to be able to probably face off on Dracula, and try to stay close enough to the other characters. But you got the jump on Chris, and then you were doing things like throwing bats and fog and such like that, hindering our movement and such. So he could never get close to you, even though we knew where you were. But the guy who had the best equipment to probably fight Dracula could never get to him.
And that's also part of the risk, is like, it doesn't sound very like, like 21 turns. Like, no, that's all you got. After turn 21, you're slowly just losing the game.
Yeah. You're bleeding after that.
Anyone else have some other final thoughts?
No. It's a very good game. If you get the opportunity to play it, definitely take it. Just because it is out of print, I mean, you're going to have a hard time finding a copy of it to play anywhere. So if somebody's nice enough to bring it to the table, just give it a shot.
Also, it is one of those games that, you go out to somebody's garage sale and they're like, oh yeah, my son went off to college and said to sell up all this stuff, and they've got it there for $20. I don't care what edition it is, just buy it. Because you never know what you're going to run into at Goodwill.
You're making some college kids cry when they come home.
Yep.
And Pat?
Yeah, I mean, anything. I agree with everything that was said. In my brain, I was sitting there thinking, what if they don't come home, Zach? What if they don't come home?
Wow. That's
Dracula
dark.
got him. Yeah, we went dark. But it is Fury of Dracula, right? Maybe all this talk of oppression and just all the tough times just got to me.
Mazes and monsters, man. Mazes and monsters.
I know.
All I know is Dracula's a nice guy. Just let him go.
Yeah. Or also, whenever somebody was talking about, what was it, Lord Goldemain got into a fight earlier with them and was just trying to run and dodge all the time. And I'm just sitting there thinking, Dracula's like, no, I'm not done with you yet. Come back here.
Get your rich ass back here.
And him just being dragged by his foot back into a room.
And that is very accurate as to what happened. Okay, you escaped the fight. Well, guess what? It's now the night turn. He gets to come back.
No, that literally happens. Like, okay, I got through this first combat. Combat happens again in about a turn. Fuck.
And we also, of course, during that game had to remind Lindsay every turn of hers. Remember, you can always trust Zach.
Yeah.
Oh my God, y'all threw that back at her.
Oh,
every chance we got.
Turn.
I mean, he's just a Dracula. How bad could it be?
And Lindsay was Mina Harker.
Yes.
I feel like that tracks for the lore.
Oh no, she was giving me like evil eyes the entire time. I was like, "Oh, they're gonna be bats there? Yeah, I knew they're gonna be bats. Thanks." Well, I want to thank all our listeners for joining us and joining us next week for another fun-filled episode.